Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Music Village. And no, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a typo, we did make a mistake. And usually we start off the show by saying, alright, all you Insomniatic TV channel servers out there. But seeing the fact that we're in the middle of the afternoon, it would be kinda awkward to say that. Unless people who didn't go to sleep last night are still up as we speak, so I think we can technically get away with that with a couple of you third shift workers who are having a little trouble going to sleep. Yeah. Well, before we go into people's sleep cycles and different work schedule points, folks, I think it's time for us to go into a very special impromptu edition of That Scene on TV. And we've been saying for weeks on end that the Jetsons was a show we wanted to review, so here it is, ladies and gentlemen. To make up for the Tuesday night special, we now present to you the As Seen on TV episode of The Jetsons, which is a show based on the future from a TV show that started on September 23rd in 1962. And for those who are wondering out there what year The Jetsons was based on, it was based on the year 2062. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, 100 years in the future is what The Jetsons was based on. And that was one of the things I loved about back then, back in the 60s, the 50s, and I think somewhere around the mid-30s and 20s. They would always use to try to predict how cool the future was with a whole bunch of cool classic futuristic cars, homes of tomorrow, and even, I guess, mechanical robots or anything that you would see during the, video game series of Fallout. And I'm sitting here looking in the year of 2020 wondering, what happened? Half of this stuff should have came out. As a kid watching this show, it gave me hope, wondering what the future was gonna be. And boy, were they wrong. And another thing that I loved about this show, folks, was the different litany list of characters that was involved with it. And one of my favorite ones, because he would always get angry at a moment's notice, and the fact that he was almost the same height as Elroy during this show, none other than Spacely Sprocket. And not to mention his rival Cogswell Cogs. According to my show, I was right with the second one. But either way, the fact that every single episode that he would make George Jetson's life miserable by yelling in his office, "Jetson!" almost the same way as Mr. Slate would yell at Fred as Flintstone, and just about every single episode of the Flintstones I could possibly imagine. And speaking of such, folks, this show was made 2 years after the Flintstones debuted. Because this show that started on September 23rd of 1962 and wrapped up in March 17th of 1963. And the reason behind it was because this show was in color and not many people back in the day had color TV sets. But was revived back in 1985 all the way to 1987 with 3 seasons on ABC. And the second and third seasons were made for syndication. And to make things even better, folks, along the way, they would come out with 4 separate movies. Yep, according to Mike's show, 4 separate movies, including not only the Jetson movie, which was the series finale that took place in July 16th of 1990, and that was due to the death of Mr. Spacely, who was Mel Blanc, and of course the man who played George Jetson during the show. Then you had the crossover of a lifetime known as The Jetsons Meets the Flintstones that took place in 1987 when the series was resurrected. Then you would have a Jetsons Gen version of the show with a form of Rocking with Judy Jetson that took place in 1988. And finally, the last known movie produced for the Jetsons, which was a bit of a resurrection of its own, would be from WWE doing a movie called, and I kid you not, Jetsons and WWE Robo WrestleMania. And if you want to know the premise of that movie, folks, The Big Show goes to the future, becomes World Heavyweight Champion, and leads an army to destroy the world while he reigns as World Heavyweight Champion. And it's up to George and his family to try to stop him, along with a couple of wrestlers along the way, too. I got it. And I hate to laugh because Maestro started laughing, too, because we said, with the way things are going now, that's probably the only way Big Show's gonna be WWE Champion or World Champion nowadays. Kinda sad, really is. But besides all of that, folks, after the series was revived and brought back on for syndication, it would eventually make its way to Cartoon Network, then shift gears all the way over to Boomerang, and would even be featured during cartoon series along the lines of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, Family Guy, and every other reference you could possibly imagine on Robot Chicken, including a couple of funny sketches that would not only involve what happened if George decided to bring the wrong briefcase in and the car decided to fold out, and would even have an iRobot parody that would feature a mock version of Will Smith trying to solve the crime of who killed George Jetson. And also an alien parody movie as well during Robot Chicken 2. And not to mention, always made me wonder why in the world did they have treadmills on the outside of these giant oversized houses that were on stilts. And even though it would be good for flood prevention, but I don't see any other practical use for those giant oversized houses. At least we didn't go in that direction for house design, or architectural design. Thank you, Maestro. And thank you for reminding me, Maestro, one of my favorite episodes of this said show has to be when the computer that was the supervisor for George Jetson actually stood up for him for one episode against Spacely when he got fired and told him to rehire him or else that he was gonna bring his company down into disarray. And not to mention, one of my favorite technologies of the said show, which I got a feeling Futurama got an idea from, was the tube designs that they had, and the fact of video television, or video, phones. There you go, video phones. Thank you again for the correction, Maestro. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review TV shows along the lines of TV Guide or any of those other famous TV reviewers you know of out there, we say this. If you want to watch a futuristic show that was based on the future from the past with people that are interesting characters with a whole bunch of inventions from an 8-year-old boy that reminded me of Dexter before his prime, then I recommend you go out there, pick up your TV channel remotes, and watch that show. And not to mention, be awe and amazed at some of the things that could have been, but it's not. Yeah, it will really make you wonder who's gonna invent these things in the future if they go in that direction. And with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back into the music, and when we return, we'll be back with more Music Village right after this. So don't go anywhere just yet, folks, and stay tuned.